Hello, friends. If you've been around for at least a year, then you know I'm keeping up with the SSU. What's that, you may ask? The captivating, the exciting Sony Spider-Man universe. This includes the amazing movies Morbius and Madam Web. Well, the SUMC, Sony's universe of Marvel characters. You know what? It actually doesn't matter. It goes by many names, and it's over, apparently. We can talk more about that later. I linked a TikTok in the description below from Sav, and I agree with every single one of her points. But what stood out to me the most was her saying that there are two things that will get her to excuse a bad movie: eye candy and carnage. I have not felt that scene in a while because same twin, same. Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome back. It's your movie buddy here, and I'm a little sick right now. Look, I thought I was getting better, but apparently not. So I took some Dayquil, I am here, and hopefully my voice isn't too bad. Either way, I am going to be catching up this time, and we're talking about a movie that I watched a couple of weeks ago. Now, whether you're a longtime subscriber or follower, or you are here with me for the first time, I am thrilled to have you here. If you are looking for detailed plot breakdowns, you will not find them here, but stick around for my spoiler-free thoughts and honest opinions on the latest film I watched in theaters. As always, if you are watching on YouTube, you can check out the timestamps in the description below to jump straight to the sections that you're most interested in. I have less than usual because I did edit down my script in an attempt to make my videos shorter, but there are still plenty of moments that you can jump to if you like. New episodes drop every Friday, so hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Spotify to stay updated. Any TikToks that I mentioned will be linked in the description below. Now, with that all out of the way, grab your popcorn and let's get into today's episode on Kraven the Hunter. Kraven's complex relationship with his ruthless father starts him down a path of vengeance, motivating him to become not only the greatest hunter in the world, but also one of its most feared. Somewhere in this movie is a hint, a whisper of a theme that deals with family bonds and their limits. But it's all just so incoherent. This theme, or any of the themes in this movie for that matter, weren't really fleshed out in a way that gave the movie a solid core. It was very hollow. I do think there was chemistry somewhere. I do think Aaron Taylor Johnson was trying to have those connections, but I don't know where the disconnect was. It was the script, let's be real. I'm sorry, you guys. I was really trying to lock in on this one, but it was either all over the place, super disjointed, nothing was happening, or what was happening just wasn't working. But let's talk about three things that did work. Aaron Taylor Johnson. Seriously though, this is where we would usually talk about standout elements in the movie, like the acting, cinematography, lighting, soundtrack, and so on. But I'm not gonna lie, very little of this movie actually worked for me. And what could have worked for me wasn't even given enough screen time. What I will say is that there were definitely concepts of a good idea. I think a more thoughtful approach to the camera work could have helped. A better story and script definitely would have elevated this movie. I like the acting. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson did a good job as Kraven, especially during the action sequences. And I actually liked Ariana DeBose as Calypso most of the time. I think what I didn't like about not just her acting, but everyone's acting overall would have been taken care of with better writing. The CGI in this movie is offensive. I wish more studios opted for practical effects when possible. Not everything needs to be CGI, and the way everything was CGI was wild. Speaking of which, there was a scene where, oh my gosh, the way I am struggling to pronounce this man's name 2 episodes in a row, because we just talked about him in the Gladiator 2 episode, Fred Hechinger? Fred's head looked like it was CGI'd onto his body during one of the scenes. I don't know what was going on there, but it was very strange. Clearly, there wasn't much that I liked about this movie, but we're still going to get into some criticisms, and I'll share my thoughts. I have been gently dragging this movie this entire time, so I wanted to get a critique from someone other than myself. I went with 3C Films on TikTok, who said, quote, "When Kraven is not on screen fighting bad guys and taking people down, you just find it so hard to care about any of these characters, whatever lame story they've got going on. There actually isn't even a plot to the movie until halfway in when something happens that they need to get done," end quote. Like I said, some of the most entertaining parts of this movie is seeing the action sequences. Don't get me wrong, they are not great, but they're entertaining. The characters and their lame stories. Yeah, it sounds bad, but I don't think what he is saying truly encapsulates how bad it actually is. Connecting with the characters, difficulty level, impossible. The writing honestly gets in the way of every single thing, including the lack of a plot. In the days leading up to seeing the movie myself, I honestly thought people were exaggerating when they said the plot took like an hour to get started. But when I was in the theater watching the movie, after a while, I was like, what are we doing here? It was just scenes strung together with no direction. Until, like 3C Films said, when something finally happens. Again, the writing. I don't know how this movie, nearly all of the SMU or SPUMC or SSU films made it in front of a general audience. And a rant, if I may, I saw a TikTok where Stoobs was talking about the SSU. Let's just call it that. Sony's Spider-Man universe. How the villain films specifically in the SSU are dead. Kraven the Hunter is the last villain film, which is hilarious and feels weird because the way they have a setup for something that might never happen. Honestly, I say reboot it all. They've done it before with Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man. Reboot it and make a more cohesive universe. In that same TikTok, she said that 1, Sony has been allowed to use Spider-Man this entire time. And 2, the creative people behind all these movies thought audiences preferred to see movies about Spider-Man villains without Spider-Man in them. Unless the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this is Disney, unless the MCU is going to tie into anything with the SSU, which is Sony, in a faster, more cohesive way, then they really should just do their own thing. Not in the way they've been doing it this whole time, but I wonder if contractually they can only have one live action Spider-Man franchise going at a time, which would be with Tom Holland. I'm sure someone watching knows, so let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, I'll do some scholarly Googling myself, but I don't see why they can't. They can continue to rent out Tom's Spidey to Disney, and then they get their own Spider-Man. It's all separate universes anyway, and they can still make their villain movies. Good villain movies, because the problem, in my opinion, isn't that they are Spider-Man-less Spider-Man villain movies, but that they're just bad movies. Okay? Introduce new characters and cross over with themselves in a smaller, more contained universe that includes Spider-Man, Venom, Black Cat, Miles as Spider-Man, Silver Sable, and maybe finally give us the Sinister Six. I mean, there's so much potential. Give the stories back to the fans. Give the stories to the people that love these characters and let them make something spectacular. Pun intended. There is also the concern that having 2 live-action Spider-Mans would be confusing. Personally, I have been explaining all of these movies to my mom for like the last 15 years, and I will continue to explain to her what is going on, who's who, what happened before, and what's going to happen next. I did not mean to rant for that long, but Sony can also just sell Spider-Man to Disney, but I doubt they have plans for that. Now, let's wrap up with my final thoughts on the movie. After discussing really what we could, the real question remains, is it worth your time? In my opinion, absolutely not. And it's been a while since I've given you guys a hard no, but that's because there isn't there isn't enough of what would get me to excuse how bad this movie is and give you, at the very least, a yes, but recommendation. This is what we talked about at the top of the episode. That TikTok I mentioned by Sav, where she talked about 2 things excusing a bad movie, eye candy and carnage. I knew this wasn't going to be a good movie. We all knew this wasn't going to be a good movie. That is not the problem here. If you've been around for the last few episodes, then you know I was going on and on about this R rating. I was so excited because I wanted to see the blood and the gore. Well, blink and you miss it, guys. Blink and you miss it. It was there, but it was poorly shot, and again, CGI. Now, before you freak out, which would freak me out, I don't want anyone harmed, obviously, but there was opportunity for, again, practical effects. Show us the aftermath. Get in there and really give us that R rating. We covered the carnage, but what about the eye candy? I'm not blind, and no one I know actually watches these videos, so let's talk about it. If the blood and gore isn't for you and you're leaning more toward, let's just say it, Aaron Taylor Johnson, that's okay. This is a safe space. But I hate to break your heart, and I will hold your hand when I tell you this. The eye candy is practically non-existent. If you saw the trailers, you saw it all. Sav also points this out in her TikTok that this man was shirtless for 2.5 times. I laughed because there's no way you don't show him off more. I told my mom this and we laughed. We had a laugh, but the joke was on us. My mom literally counted in the theater the number of times. And Sav, if you're watching, she's totally not. I apologize for doubting you, girl, because you were right. Literally 2.5 times. What a waste. Anyway, finishing this section off, Kit Laser made a good point. He said that he watched this movie in a, quote, theater with 2 other people and they weren't vibing. I have a feeling if I saw this with like 100 people who were down to clown, I would have had a pretty good time. End quote. I don't think he was wrong. I think if I was in a crowded theater that just laughed out loud and were a little more vocal and silly, this could have been fun. I think if you have friends that are kind of silly, kind of goofy, kind of loud, and you want something to watch, this one might be fun to put on at home once it's available to stream. All right, movie fans, before we get into the usual outro, let's talk about what's coming next. It's been a couple of weeks since the last time we talked. Last time I shared my thoughts on Gladiator 2 and Wicked. Then I watched Solo Leveling Reawakening, Kraven the Hunter, and Sonic 3. This episode was supposed to drop last week, and honestly, I was on track. But if you saw my post on YouTube's community tab, then you know I have a bit of an ongoing family emergency, and also I stayed sick, so I've just been out of it for like the past 2 weeks. I never want to fall behind, but things happen and it's okay to take a break. That said, I will be dropping the episode for Sonic 3 next week. The plan was to take a break somewhere in here for the holiday, but my work schedule actually isn't that bad, so I should be able to get that episode out. The last movie of the year that I have tickets for is Nosferatu, and the closer we get to the release date, the more excited I get for this movie. Again, the plan was to take a week off, but like I said, we're going to talk about Sonic 3 next week and then Nosferatu, which I already know is going to be so hard because I'm going to want to talk about that one immediately, but one thing at a time. Nosferatu and the annual recap episode will be posted on the 10th next year. As always, a huge thank you to everyone who has stuck around with me to the end of today's episode. Let me know what you thought of Kraven the Hunter. Was there enough eye candy and or carnage for you? What do you think could have made this movie better? I think more of both, to be honest, but I did see a TikTok and I forget who posted it. Honestly, maybe it's one of the ones that I did link, but they said that the movie should have been sillier. Put Kraven in the cheetah print pants. I think that is hilarious. Would it have helped? Probably not. I think the tone of this movie was all over the place. I wouldn't have minded full silly, but this movie just didn't know what it wanted to do, and it showed. I did want to add to this section that I did watch a bunch of Christmas movies with my family, and one of the movies that we watched was Violent Night, and I think Kraven the Hunter should have taken that approach. So much more violence, and honestly, lean into some of the sillier elements in a way that really works with the story and the characters. I'm just throwing ideas out though. What do you guys think? Your feedback is always appreciated, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on YouTube, or if you're on the Spotify app, swipe up and let me know what you're thinking. I would love to hear from you guys, so let's get the conversation going. And if you're enjoying the movie talk on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay updated on everything I'm looking forward to seeing next year. We'll talk about all of those movies in the annual recap episode. If you enjoy on the go listening, then you should check out the podcast, especially so you don't miss out on those podcast exclusive episodes. Tune in every Friday for new episodes, and hey, if you're on Instagram, follow me at a.rocket.review for more updates. If you have made it this far into the episode, thank you so much for joining me. This is the last episode of 2024, and I cannot express how much I appreciate your support and really what this channel has done for me. It's been a really huge help balancing my depression and my stress. So thank you all so much. Until next year, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, happy movie watching, happy holidays, and happy new year. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.